I'm standing in ankle-deep water, watching my life's work sink. Karen Pemberton's HOA just demolished my $40,000 sailboat. 3 years I spent restoring that Catalina 38. Weekends sanding teak, replacing rigging, bringing her back to life after my wife died. That boat was my therapy, my escape, my second chance. Karen said it was an eyesore that hurt property values, so she had it destroyed.
Feeling better now, Garrett?
Karen's voice cuts through the morning air as she walks down to survey her handiwork. I turn to face her, debris floating between us.
Thanks for asking, Karen. I'm doing just fine.
She looks confused, probably expected tears or rage. 3 weeks ago, I found something in Uncle Robert's papers that changes everything. Something she doesn't know about. What would you do if your HOA destroyed your boat? Fight back immediately or let them think they won first? Comment your location, revenge now or revenge better. This is just the beginning. Let me take you back 3 weeks before Karen's demolition party. I'm sitting in Uncle Robert's dusty study, sorting through boxes of maritime paperwork for the estate lawyer. Bills, boat registrations, dock permits, the usual nautical bureaucracy that comes with waterfront property. Then I find it, a thick manila folder labeled Lighthouse Cove, Marina Corporation. Inside, incorporation documents from 1962, stock certificates, and a letter in Uncle Robert's handwriting that makes my hands shake. Garrett, if you're reading this, some fool is probably trying to push you around about your boat. Thought you should know, you own most of the water they're standing on. Use it wisely. Uncle Robert. The smell of old paper and salt air drifts through the open window as I flip through document after document. 67% ownership of Lighthouse Cove Marina Corporation. Water rights extending 200 feet from shore. Every waterfront property in Lighthouse Cove? They're lessees, not owners, including Karen Pemberton's precious mansion. I lean back in Uncle Robert's leather chair, mind racing. 3 years Karen's been harassing boat owners, claiming HOA authority over maritime matters. Turns out she's been playing dress-up with power that was never hers. Every violation notice, every fine, every community standard she's enforced, completely illegal. But here's the beautiful part. I don't have to use this information right away. See, Karen Pemberton is the type of person who can't help herself. Give her an inch of perceived power and she'll take a mile. Give her what she thinks is a victory and she'll get greedy. I've watched her operate for 3 years, first targeting old Pete's fishing nets, then the Morrison family's lobster traps, now my sailboat. The woman has a pattern, and patterns are predictable. So I make a decision that probably sounds crazy. I'm going to let her escalate. I'm going to document every illegal action, every harassment campaign, every violation of maritime law she commits while thinking she's untouchable. And when she finally crosses the line into criminal territory, which she will, because people like Karen always do, I'm going to drop the hammer. My maritime lawyer confirms what the documents already told me. Marina corporations supersede HOA authority on waterfront matters, period. In coastal disputes, corporate water rights trump neighborhood associations every time. But the timing has to be perfect. Strike too early, and Karen just backs down, maybe resigns from the HOA, moves away. Strike at the right moment, and she destroys herself so completely that no future Karen will ever try this again. The creak of dock planks outside Uncle Robert's window sounds different now. That's my marina out there. Those are my tenants, and one of them has been masquerading as the landlord for 3 years. I start keeping a journal. Every Karen interaction, every illegal demand, every harassment incident against local boat owners. The fishing community starts opening up when they realize someone's finally listening. Stories pour out, threats, intimidation, discriminatory enforcement based on boat size and owner income. 3 weeks I spend building my case, watching Karen operate, learning her triggers. She's predictable, all right. Mention property values and she goes nuclear. Suggest her authority isn't absolute and she doubles down. Challenge her publicly and she makes mistakes. The taste of morning coffee turns bitter as I read her latest violation notice about my yacht. Final warning before enforcement action. I know what that means. Karen's been asking around about demolition companies. Sal at the harbor master's office mentioned her inquiries about emergency removal procedures. She's going to destroy my boat, and I'm going to let her. Because sometimes the best trap is the one your enemy builds for herself. Sometimes justice isn't about stopping the crime, it's about letting the criminal hang themselves with their own rope in front of the whole community, with enough evidence to ensure they never hurt anyone else again. The sound of seagulls crying over the harbor reminds me why Uncle Robert loved this place. Working boats, honest fishermen, maritime heritage stretching back generations. Karen sees dollar signs and prestigious addresses. She's about to learn the difference between owning water and respecting it. 3 days after my discovery in Uncle Robert's study, Karen makes her first real move. She shows up at my dock with a clipboard, measuring tape, and her cousin Eddie, apparently Lighthouse Cove's newest marine assessment specialist. "Morning, Garrett." Karen's voice drips with fake sweetness. "Just here for a routine waterfront inspection, making sure everything's up to community standards." I'm sitting on my yacht's deck, sanding teak railings, watching this comedy unfold. Eddie's wearing golf cleats, actual golf cleats, to inspect a boat. The sound of metal spikes scratching against fiberglass makes me wince, but I keep quiet. This is comedy gold. "That's interesting, Karen. What qualifies Eddie here for marine assessment work?" "He detailed my husband's boat last summer. Very thorough." Eddie nods seriously, pulls out his phone, starts taking pictures of my rigging like he's documenting a crime scene. Then he grabs a shroud for balance, setting off every wind chime and bell within 50 yards. The cacophony echoes across the harbor while Eddie dangles there like a confused Christmas ornament. "Structurally questionable," he announces, untangling himself from my rigging. "And aesthetically, incompatible." Karen beams like she's just solved world hunger. There you have it. Official assessment. 2 days later, the HOA violation notice arrives in my mailbox. Daily fines of $150 until my yacht meets community maritime standards, whatever those are supposed to be. The board votes 4-3 in favor, with Karen personally delivering a copy to my door that evening. "Feeling the squeeze yet, Garrett?" she asks, clearly savoring what she thinks is her moment of triumph. "Actually, Karen, this is absolutely fascinating. Tell me more about these maritime standards you've developed." Here's where I spring my first counter-move. While Karen thinks she's tightening the screws, I'm building a legal case that would make prosecutors weep with joy. I remember reading about maritime jurisdiction during my Coast Guard days. HOAs have exactly zero authority over vessels on navigable waterways. My lawyer buddy from Boston confirms it when I call him about my boat problem. Turns out he's dealing with similar HOA nonsense with his own slip in Marblehead. The county courthouse becomes my second home as I dig through Marina lease documents and property boundaries. Uncle Robert's papers show our dock lease extends 200 feet into the water, well beyond any possible HOA jurisdiction. I file formal challenges with the State Harbor Commission and send Karen a strongly worded cease and desist letter about maritime law overreach. The smell of fresh coffee and bacon grease fills the waterfront diner as news of the challenge spreads through the fishing community. They rally immediately. A coffee for the Coast Guard donation jar appears overnight behind the counter. "She tried making me move my lobster traps because they were visually disruptive," Pete Torino tells me over morning coffee. "Disruptive to the fish, I guess." Captain Morrison nods grimly. "Same woman told me my nets violated some aesthetic covenant. Lady doesn't know a seine net from a clothesline, but she's got opinions about everything floating in this harbor." Meanwhile, Karen's busy organizing her own concerned homeowners group, trying to rally support from the yacht club crowd and newer residents. But here's the thing about bullies. Once people see them get challenged publicly, they start looking a lot less intimidating. The local newspaper picks up the story with obvious relish. HOA versus Coast Guard veteran, who controls the water? The reporter's clearly enjoying the David versus Goliath angle, especially when Karen refuses to comment and refers all questions to her legal team. What legal team? Eddie the golf-cleated boat detailer? 3 more boat owners come forward with similar harassment stories over the next week. Turns out Karen's been playing this intimidation game for years. Pressure, harass, and force out anyone who doesn't fit her narrow vision of waterfront elegance. But here's her problem. All those previous victims just took their boats and left quietly. I'm not going anywhere. And every single day she continues this charade, I'm documenting another clear violation of state maritime law. Social media erupts on the town Facebook page, with fishing families sharing their own Karen stories. The yacht club crowd stays mostly quiet, but I notice some of them avoiding eye contact with Karen at the grocery store. Then comes the phone call that changes everything. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Rebecca Palmer from the county assessor's office. We've been reviewing waterfront property tax claims following your Marina Corporation inquiry, and we found some significant irregularities with the Pemberton property. Are you available to discuss your corporate water rights and her tax assessment claims? The taste of victory starts mixing with my morning coffee. Not because I'm winning yet, but because Karen's about to discover she's been claiming water rights she never legally owned on property that's been paying the wrong taxes for 3 years running. Funny how people who love throwing their weight around never bother checking whether they're actually standing on solid ground. The county assessor's call lights a fire under Karen like I've never seen before. Within 48 hours, she's hired an actual marine surveyor. Not Cousin Eddie this time, but a guy with credentials and a clipboard that looks official. "Mr. Blackwood," the surveyor says apologetically, "I'm required to inspect your vessel for safety violations. Mrs. Pemberton has expressed concerns about structural integrity." I watch from my dock as this poor guy climbs all over my perfectly seaworthy yacht, testing every cleat, checking every through hull, measuring deck load distributions. The smell of marine varnish and salt spray fills the air while he does his job professionally and thoroughly. 3 hours later, he hands me his report. "Your vessel is in excellent condition. Minor recommendation to tighten one dock cleat, but she's completely seaworthy." Karen snatches the report from my hands before I can even finish reading it. "What about this loose cleat? That's a safety violation." "Ma'am, it's a maintenance suggestion, not a safety violation," Karen repeats firmly. "I'm reporting this to the harbor master immediately." The next morning, Harbor Master Sal Torino shows up during a November storm, rain pelting the dock like machine gun fire. He's clearly not happy about being dragged out in this weather. "Garrett, I gotta check that cleat Karen's screaming about," Sal says, water dripping from his rain slicker. "You know this is bullshit, right?" "Do what you gotta do, Sal." He tightens the cleat with a wrench, takes about 30 seconds, and shakes his head. "There, fixed. Tell Karen to stop wasting my time with this nonsense." But Karen's not done. She's discovered that the Coast Guard has jurisdiction over vessel safety, so she calls them for an inspection. The petty officer who returns her call explains politely that they don't inspect private vessels on private docks unless there's an actual maritime emergency. Karen's not hearing it. "But it's a safety hazard to the community." "Ma'am, we've reviewed the surveyor's report. Your concerns don't meet our criteria for intervention." While Karen's burning through her credibility with every agency in Massachusetts, I'm quietly building my counterattack. I remember reading about environmental compliance during my Coast Guard training. Waterfront properties need permits for any modifications affecting natural water flow. So I take a walk around Karen's property with a camera. Her oversized boat lift? Built without proper permits. The decorative dock expansion she added last year? Never filed environmental impact paperwork. Best of all, she's got decorative runoff flowing directly from her landscaping into protected shellfish beds. I document everything, then call my contact at the state environmental office. Massachusetts takes water contamination seriously, especially in areas with commercial fishing. "We'll send someone out next week," the environmental officer tells me. "If there are unpermitted modifications affecting water quality, we'll need immediate remediation." The taste of irony is sweeter than my morning coffee. Karen's trying to use safety regulations against me while violating about 6 environmental laws herself. Meanwhile, the local political pressure is building. Karen convinces 3 town selectmen to attend an emergency meeting about my yacht. She's prepared a slideshow comparing my boat to the neighborhood's maritime aesthetic standards, whatever those are. The meeting's held at the community center with about 40 residents attending. Karen stands at the front with her PowerPoint presentation, clicking through photos of expensive yachts versus my non-conforming vessel. "Property values depend on maintaining consistent standards," she announces. "One substandard boat affects everyone's investment." That's when Pete Torino stands up from the back row. "Karen, I've been fishing these waters for 40 years. Garrett's boat is the prettiest thing I've seen floating here since my grandfather's lobster boat." Murmurs of agreement ripple through the fishing families. Captain Morrison nods. "That's a working boat, restored with love, not some floating McMansion nobody actually sails." Karen's face reddens. "We're not discussing fishing boats, we're discussing community standards." "Whose community?" Pete shoots back. "This was a working waterfront long before you showed up." The meeting dissolves into chaos, with Karen storming out after accusing the selectmen of failing to protect property values. 2 of the 3 selectmen quietly approach me afterward. Garrett, we've got no authority over boats anyway, one admits. Karen's barking up the wrong tree, and she's making enemies doing it. 3 more boat owners come forward that week with stories of Karen's harassment. The regional boating magazine calls for an interview about HOA overreach in coastal communities. Suddenly, my little dispute is becoming a poster child for property rights versus bureaucratic bullying. But Karen's desperation is leading somewhere dangerous. I overhear her at the grocery store talking to another HOA board member about emergency action and getting this resolved before property values tank. The sound of November wind rattling my rigging takes on an ominous tone. I know that desperation makes people do stupid things, and Karen Pemberton is running out of legitimate options. That's when my environmental officer contact calls back with news that makes me smile. Mr. Blackwood, we've completed our preliminary assessment of the Pemberton property. We've identified multiple violations requiring immediate attention. Mrs. Pemberton is looking at significant fines and mandatory remediation costs. She's also going to need to remove those unpermitted dock modifications. The net is tightening around Karen, and she doesn't even know it yet. 2 weeks after the disastrous town meeting, Karen goes nuclear. I'm loading gear into my truck for a weekend trip to visit my sister in Vermont when I get the call that changes everything. Garrett, you need to get back here now. Pete Torino's voice is tight with anger. They destroyed your boat. The 3-hour drive home feels like an eternity. My hands grip the steering wheel as Pete's words echo in my head. Demolition crew showed up at dawn, gone by noon, nothing left but splinters. I pull into my driveway and see the empty dock pilings jutting from the water like broken teeth. Pieces of my yacht's hull bob in the harbor, $40,000 of dreams and 3 years of restoration work scattered like expensive confetti across the water. The smell of diesel fuel hangs heavy in the salt air. My boat's engine, cracked open like an egg, leaked its contents into the harbor I'd come to love. The sound of small waves lapping against debris creates a funeral rhythm that makes my chest tight. Karen's standing on her deck with a glass of wine, surveying her handiwork. When she sees me, she actually waves. Sorry about the mess, Garrett, she calls out. Emergency action was necessary. Structural safety concerns, you understand. I walk down to what's left of my dock, fishing pieces of teak decking from the water. Each fragment represents hours of careful restoration, sanding, sealing, loving this old boat back to life after losing my wife. The fury builds slowly, like a storm gathering offshore. But underneath the rage, there's something else, satisfaction. Because Karen Pemberton just committed multiple felonies on water she doesn't own, documented by 3 witnesses and a demolition company that never checked permits. I pull out my phone and start taking pictures. Every piece of debris, every oil slick, every splinter of what used to be my sanctuary. The demolition company's truck is still parked at the public landing. I photograph their license plate, company name, equipment. Pete appears beside me, face grim. Garrett, I'm sorry. I tried calling you when they showed up, but you did nothing wrong, Pete. This is exactly what I needed her to do. Pete looks confused. What do you mean? I mean Karen just destroyed a seaworthy vessel on state waters without proper permits, environmental clearance, or legal authority. I pocket my phone and smile. She just handed me the criminal case I've been building for 3 weeks. Within an hour, I filed police reports for destruction of property. The marine insurance investigator arrives that afternoon, documenting the scene and confirming what the professional survey already proved. My yacht was completely seaworthy and posed no safety threat. The demolition company, when contacted, admits they never pulled marine permits. They assumed the HOA had proper authority for waterfront work. Their contract was with Karen personally, not the HOA, meaning she's personally liable for the destruction. But here's the beautiful part. While I'm dealing with insurance paperwork and police reports, the State Environmental Office is conducting their surprise inspection of Karen's property. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Environmental Officer Sarah Palmer finds exactly what I photographed 2 weeks ago. Unpermitted dock modifications, illegal runoff affecting protected shellfish beds, and wetland violations that require immediate remediation. Mrs. Pemberton, you're looking at a $50,000 fine for environmental violations plus mandatory cleanup costs, Officer Palmer explains as Karen turns pale. You have 48 hours to begin remediation or face additional penalties. The sound of Karen's voice rising to a shriek carries across the water as the reality hits her. She's not just facing fines, she's looking at potential criminal charges for environmental contamination. Meanwhile, the local news crew arrives to cover the yacht demolition controversy. The reporter interviews Pete about the morning's events, and his words are pure gold. 40 years I've been fishing these waters, and I never seen such destruction. That was a beautiful boat, restored with love and care. What they did here today, it's criminal. Karen, cornered by reporters, makes her biggest mistake yet. That vessel was a danger to the community. I did what the HOA board authorized for public safety. Except the HOA meeting minutes show no such authorization. 3 board members are already distancing themselves, claiming they were misled about the timeline and legality. The taste of victory is starting to overwhelm the bitterness of loss. Yes, they destroyed my boat. But in doing so, Karen committed enough crimes to end her harassment campaign forever. That evening, my maritime lawyer calls with news that makes me smile despite everything. Garrett, based on the police reports and environmental violations, the district attorney's office is interested in this case. Destruction of property, environmental crimes, operating outside legal authority, she's looking at serious charges. I stand on my broken dock as sunset paints the harbor gold and red. Pieces of my yacht still float nearby, but they're not debris anymore. They're evidence. Evidence that will protect every boat owner in this harbor from future Karen Pembertons. The sound of police boats circling the oil slick reminds me that sometimes justice requires sacrifice. Sometimes you have to let the enemy destroy something you love to prove just how dangerous they really are. Karen wanted to play games with authority she didn't have. Now she's about to learn what real authority looks like when it's backed by criminal courts and environmental law. Game over, Karen. You just played yourself. The day after my yacht becomes expensive debris, I decide it's time to end Karen's little power trip once and for all. 3 weeks of watching her dig her own grave has been entertaining, but she just crossed a line that requires immediate response. I call an emergency town meeting for Friday evening. The official notice reads simply, "Regarding Marina Authority and waterfront property rights." Karen probably thinks I'm finally throwing in the towel, maybe trying to negotiate some kind of settlement after her demolition victory. She has no idea what's coming. Friday night, the community center is packed. Word has spread through both the fishing community and the yacht club crowd. Even the regional news crew shows up, expecting to cover the aftermath of the boat destruction story. Karen arrives fashionably late, wearing her best power suit and carrying a leather portfolio. She's brought her husband Frank and 3 other HOA board members as backup. The woman is practically glowing with confidence as she takes a seat in the front row. "Thank you all for coming," I begin, standing at the podium with Uncle Robert's manila folder in my hands. "I've called this meeting to clear up some confusion about waterfront authority in Lighthouse Cove." Karen's smile widens. She thinks she's about to watch me publicly surrender. 3 weeks ago, I discovered something interesting in my uncle's estate papers. Something that changes everything about the marina regulations Mrs. Pemberton has been enforcing. I pull out the incorporation documents and hold them up for everyone to see. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the majority owner of Lighthouse Cove Marina Corporation. That would be me." The room goes dead silent. You could hear a pin drop on the harbor 40 yards away. According to these documents, filed with the state in 1962 and never dissolved, I own 67% of this marina. Every dock, every slip, every inch of water access that your waterfront properties depend on. Karen's face drains of color like someone pulled a plug. Her confident smile melts into something between confusion and panic. That means every waterfront homeowner in this room, including Mrs. Pemberton, is technically a lessee, not an owner of water rights. Your property deeds give you land access to the water. They don't give you ownership of the water itself. I let that sink in for a moment while Karen frantically whispers to her husband. For the past 3 years, Mrs. Pemberton has been operating under the assumption that the HOA has authority over maritime matters. According to Massachusetts law and these corporate documents, that authority has always belonged to the Marina Corporation, which means it's belonged to me. The smell of panic sweat is starting to mix with the community center's stale coffee aroma. Karen looks like she's about to be sick. Harbor Commissioner Mike Walsh stands up from the back. "Mr. Blackwood, are those documents legitimate?" "Fully legitimate and verified by the state. The Marina Corporation has been dormant but never dissolved. I'm reactivating it immediately." Karen finally finds her voice. "This is ridiculous. You can't just claim ownership of—" "Mrs. Pemberton," I interrupt calmly. "Yesterday you destroyed a $40,000 yacht on water that you never had any authority to regulate. You committed multiple felonies on property that I own. The room erupts in murmurs. Reporters are frantically taking notes. Karen's husband is slumping in his chair like someone just told him his house is on fire. But here's the really interesting part, I continue, pulling out more documents. According to the original Marina agreements, all waterfront lessees owe corporate fees based on property values and water usage. These fees haven't been collected since Uncle Robert's death 3 years ago. I look directly at Karen. Mrs. Pemberton, your property alone owes $31,000 in back Marina fees, plus penalties and interest. Karen shoots to her feet. This is insane. You can't just... Additionally, I continue, the environmental violations discovered on your property this week, the unpermitted dock modifications, the illegal runoff, the wetland contamination, all of that happened on Marina Corporation property without proper authorization. Environmental Officer Palmer nods from her seat. The violations are substantial and require immediate remediation. The taste of justice is sweeter than I imagined. 3 weeks of patience, 3 weeks of documentation, 3 weeks of watching Karen abuse authority she never legally possessed, all leading to this moment. So here's where we stand, I announced to the room. The Marina Corporation is officially reactivated. New lease agreements will be offered to all current waterfront residents at reasonable rates. Environmental compliance will be mandatory. And anyone who's been harassing boat owners based on fictional authority, well, that stops immediately. Karen's voice cracks as she tries one last desperate play. You can't just take people's homes. This is America. I'm not taking anyone's home, Mrs. Pemberton. I'm clarifying who actually owns the water access that makes those homes valuable. And right now, you owe the Marina Corporation enough money to buy 2 boats like the one you destroyed. The sound of Karen's world collapsing is almost audible. 3 years of bullying boat owners, intimidating elderly fishermen, playing queen of the waterfront, all based on authority that existed only in her imagination. Uncle Robert's letter was right. Some fool was trying to push me around about my boat. Too bad for Karen, she picked the wrong boat owner to mess with. The meeting ends with most residents asking about new lease terms and compliance requirements. Reasonable people willing to work within the actual legal framework. Karen storms out without a word, but I can hear her cell phone conversation through the community center's thin walls. She's calling lawyers, trying to find someone who'll tell her this isn't real. Good luck with that, Karen. Reality has a way of being very, very real. The morning after dropping the Marina Corporation bombshell, my phone starts ringing before sunrise. 8 of the 9 waterfront property owners want to discuss new lease agreements. The 9th? Well, Karen's not answering her phone. My maritime lawyer arrives from Boston with a briefcase full of corporate reactivation paperwork and a smile that could power the lighthouse. Garrett, this is the most satisfying property rights case I've handled in 20 years. Let's make sure we do this right. First order of business, officially notify all state agencies about the Marina Corporation reactivation. Massachusetts Secretary of State, Harbor Commission, Environmental Protection, Coast Guard Auxiliary, everyone who needs to know that there's a new sheriff in these waters. The smell of fresh ink fills my kitchen as we prepare legal notifications. Each document represents another nail in Karen's coffin of fictional authority. She spent 3 years pretending to regulate waters she never controlled. Now she's about to learn what real regulation looks like. Here's your strategy, my lawyer explains over coffee and legal briefs. Marina corporations have broad authority over waterfront activities, safety standards, and environmental compliance. You can legally enforce regulations that the HOA never could. I spread Uncle Robert's original Marina blueprints across the kitchen table. The vision becomes clear. This was never meant to be an exclusive yacht club for rich people. It was designed as a working waterfront that could accommodate both commercial fishing and recreational boating. Time for some professional documentation. I hire a licensed marine engineer to inspect every waterfront property for safety and environmental compliance. Not Cousin Eddie with golf cleats. A real professional with credentials that will hold up in court. The inspection results are eye-opening. Karen's property has the most violations. Oversized boat lift exceeding weight limits, unpermitted electrical work that could electrocute fish, and decorative modifications that actually weaken the shared dock system. Knowledge nugget time. Marina safety inspections follow Coast Guard standards, which supersede local building codes. I learned this during my service days. Maritime safety isn't negotiable, even for wealthy property owners who think rules don't apply to them. Meanwhile, I'm building alliances throughout the community. The fishing cooperative gets first priority for permanent dock space at reasonable rates. These families have worked these waters for generations. They deserve protection from gentrification harassment. Captain Morrison nearly tears up when I offer his family a 50-year lease at 1990s rates. Garrett, Karen tried to price us out 3 times, said our gear was incompatible with neighborhood aesthetics. This means we can stay. The Marine Conservation Group jumps at my offer to partner on harbor restoration. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the marine biologist, has been fighting Karen's environmental violations for 2 years. Your uncle was a visionary, she tells me. This marina design actually improves water quality instead of degrading it. Next comes the financial strategy. 8 properties owe back corporate fees totaling $89,000. But I'm not looking to bankrupt my neighbors. I want compliance and cooperation. I design an amnesty program, pay 50% of back fees, sign new environmental compliance agreements, and receive protection from future harassment. Most residents jump at the deal. It's cheaper than fighting and provides security they never had under Karen's reign of terror. Karen gets no amnesty. Her bill stands at $31,000 in back fees, plus yacht replacement costs, plus environmental remediation expenses, plus legal fees for 3 years of harassment. The taste of calculated justice gets better every day. I install security cameras at marina boundaries, perfectly legal as the marina operator. Every interaction will be documented now. No more he said, she said disputes. Everything recorded, everything admissible in court. The local media strategy writes itself. I invite the regional boating magazine to cover marina restoration and waterfront heritage preservation. The story angle: family legacy protecting working waterfront from corporate harassment. 3 television stations request interviews about the David versus Goliath waterfront battle. I accept them all. Sunlight is the best disinfectant for bullies like Karen. The sound of hammers driving new marina boundary stakes into rocky shore echoes across the harbor. Physical demarcation of legitimate authority. Every stake represents protection for current and future boat owners. I partner with the retired harbor patrol officer who's been watching Karen's harassment campaigns for years. Officer Jim Bradley becomes marina security consultant, bringing 40 years of maritime law enforcement experience. Garrett, what you're doing here, protecting working waterfront from fake authority, this is why I got into harbor patrol originally, Jim tells me. Karen's been a problem for years, but nobody had the legal standing to stop her until now. Final preparation, documenting every regulatory violation on Karen's property for official enforcement action. The Marine Engineer's report reads like a criminal indictment. Structural dangers, environmental crimes, safety hazards that could injure other boat owners. I schedule the official marina inspection for Harbor Festival weekend. Maximum community visibility, maximum media presence, maximum accountability for 3 years of illegal harassment. But I saved the best for last, researching Karen's husband's insurance business. Turns out Frank Pemberton's company has been overcharging waterfront property owners for high-risk marina coverage that was never actually high-risk because the Marina Corporation maintained professional safety standards. The web of Karen's fictional authority reaches deeper than I imagined. She and Frank have been profiting from the chaos she created, charging premium rates for problems that didn't exist. Time to end this, once and for all. The creak of Uncle Robert's old rocking chair reminds me why this matters. He protected this waterfront for 40 years, maintaining it as a place where honest people could enjoy honest boats without harassment from people who think money equals authority. Karen wanted to play games with power she didn't have. Now she's about to discover what happens when someone with actual power decides to play back. Karen's response to losing her fictional authority is exactly what I expected: complete meltdown disguised as strategic warfare. She hires the most expensive lawyer in Boston, forms a waterfront property owners defense committee, and starts spreading rumors about my mental instability following my wife's death. The woman just can't help herself. Even facing criminal charges, she doubles down on the harassment that got her into trouble in the first place. Garrett's using grief to manipulate this community, she tells anyone who'll listen. Veterans with PTSD shouldn't have authority over other people's property investments. What Karen doesn't realize is that every word of this character assassination campaign is being documented by 3 different people. Her own neighbors are sending me recordings of her increasingly unhinged phone calls. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down calls me Tuesday morning. Garrett, Karen asked me to sign a petition about your dangerous mental state. I told her where she could put her petition. The smell of desperation is starting to overwhelm Karen's usual perfume cloud when she appears at the marina boundaries. She's convinced the Marina Corporation documents must be forged. so she hires a private investigator to expose the fraud. Her PI makes one fundamental mistake. He investigates the wrong Garrett Blackwood. Turns out there's a Coast Guard mechanic in Michigan with the same name who has a 30-year perfect service record, Bronze Star, and Community Service Awards. The investigation actually strengthens my case. Meanwhile, I'm quietly activating all the Marina Corporation's legal powers. Official reactivation with the Harbor Commission, professional marine engineering surveys, environmental compliance documentation, safety standard enforcement. Everything Karen pretended to do illegally for 3 years, I'm now doing legitimately through proper channels. Karen tries lobbying town officials to investigate this Marina Corporation takeover. She appears at selectmen meetings with charts and graphs about property value destruction and veteran manipulation tactics. The selectmen listen politely, then ask to see her legal documentation of HOA Maritime Authority. She has none, because it never existed. Mrs. Pemberton, Selectman Williams says after her third presentation, we've reviewed the Marina Corporation documents with our legal counsel. Mr. Blackwood's authority appears legitimate and properly documented. Karen's voice rises to a shriek that can be heard in the parking lot. This is a conspiracy. You're all being manipulated by a mentally unstable veteran. 3 selectmen exchange glances. Nobody likes being called a conspirator, especially by someone facing criminal charges for property destruction. But Karen's biggest mistake comes when she approaches Harbor Commissioner Mike Walsh with an envelope full of cash. I think there's been some confusion about Marina Authority, she says, sliding the envelope across his desk. Perhaps we can clarify the situation. What she doesn't know is that Mike's wearing a wire. The FBI has been investigating municipal corruption in coastal towns, and Mike agreed to cooperate after receiving several suspicious consultation offers. The recorded conversation is pure gold. Karen, I'm prepared to make this worth your while if you can find problems with Blackwood's Marina claims. Mike, are you offering me money to falsify official documents? Karen, I'm offering you a consulting fee for thorough research into potential irregularities. Mike, ma'am, what you're describing sounds like bribery of a public official. Karen, don't be dramatic, this is just business. I need this Marina nonsense to disappear. The taste of poetic justice gets sweeter every day. Karen tried to destroy my life using fake authority. Now she's destroying her own life with real crimes. The FBI delivers the bribery recording to the district attorney's office Thursday afternoon. By Friday morning, Karen's looking at federal charges on top of her state environmental violations and property destruction charges. Her expensive Boston lawyer withdraws from the case after the bribery evidence surfaces. Nobody wants to represent a client who commits new crimes while fighting old charges. Frank Pemberton's insurance company faces a state investigation for overcharging Marina policies based on non-existent risk factors. 3 decades of high-risk waterfront coverage, justified by problems that were actually caused by his wife's harassment campaigns. The sound of Karen's world collapsing echoes across the harbor. Her property is now under environmental enforcement orders. Her husband's business faces regulatory shutdown. Her defense committee disbanded after learning about the federal charges. But she's not done yet. Desperation makes people dangerous, and Karen Pemberton is running out of legal options. I know she's planning something final and desperate because she's been asking around about emergency property sales and developer interest in marina properties. The woman who spent 3 years harassing boat owners is about to learn that some boats are unsinkable, especially when they're protected by legitimate authority instead of fictional power. Dr. Martinez from the conservation group calls with news that makes me smile despite everything. Garrett, the EPA is considering your marina as a model for sustainable waterfront development. Karen's violations actually helped document what not to do. Even Karen's crimes are making the harbor a better place. Sometimes justice has a sense of humor. I stand on my rebuilt dock. Yes, I'm already rebuilding using Marina Corporation funds from the Amnesty program, watching sunset paint the harbor gold and red. Tomorrow is Harbor Festival, and Karen doesn't know I've scheduled official marina inspections during peak attendance. She thinks she's going to salvage her reputation with one final public relations gambit. Instead, she's about to face the most public accountability of her life in front of the entire community she spent 3 years terrorizing. The creak of new dock planks under my feet reminds me that sometimes destruction leads to something better. Karen destroyed my yacht, but she also destroyed her own credibility so completely that no future Karen will ever try this again. Game almost over. One more move left to play. The morning of Harbor Festival, Karen plays her final card. She arrives at the marina at dawn with a moving truck, 3 burly men, and what looks like a last-ditch effort to destroy evidence before the official inspections begin. I'm watching from my rebuilt dock with Officer Bradley and Dr. Martinez sipping coffee as Karen directs her hired muscle to start dismantling her illegal dock modifications. She's trying to remove evidence before EPA enforcement, Dr. Martinez observes, taking photos with a telephoto lens. Too late, though. We've documented everything. The smell of fresh lumber from my new dock mingles with the acrid scent of Karen's panic-driven demolition work. Her crew is using chainsaws to cut apart boat lift supports, creating more environmental damage while trying to hide the original violations. "Ma'am, you need permits for waterfront demolition," Officer Bradley calls out across the water, "especially in protected environmental zones." Karen pretends not to hear him. She's focused on erasing 3 years of illegal modifications before the Harbor Festival crowds arrive and witness her violations firsthand. But here's what she doesn't know. I've already invited federal environmental officers to observe today's activities. They're parked in unmarked vehicles, documenting every unpermitted chainsaw cut, every piece of debris falling into protected waters. By 8 a.m., Harbor Festival setup crews start arriving. Local vendors, fishing boat displays, conservation group booths, and 3 television news crews who heard about today's Waterfront Authority demonstration. Karen's demolition work becomes increasingly frantic as she realizes how many witnesses are gathering. Her hired crew starts questioning whether they should continue without proper permits. "Lady, this doesn't feel legal," one worker tells her. "You sure we're supposed to be cutting dock supports in a nature preserve?" "Just keep working," Karen snaps. "I'll handle the paperwork." What paperwork? The woman who spent 3 years demanding permits from others has no permits for her own emergency demolition. At 10 a.m., the official Marina inspection begins. Marine engineer Roberts arrives with a full crew, professional equipment, and media documentation of every safety violation on Karen's property. The timing is perfect. Harbor Festival crowds provide maximum witness to Karen's 3 years of illegal harassment finally receiving official accountability. Mrs. Pemberton's boat lift exceeded weight capacity by 40%. Engineer Roberts announces to the gathered crowd. These support modifications created structural dangers for the entire shared dock system. Karen rushes over, covered in sawdust and panic sweat. "Those modifications were approved by the HOA board." "Ma'am, the HOA never had authority over marina engineering standards," Roberts explains patiently. "Only the Marina Corporation can approve structural modifications affecting shared waterway infrastructure." The taste of vindication gets better as more violations are documented publicly. Environmental Officer Palmer arrives with federal backup, officially citing Karen for improper demolition in protected waters. "Mrs. Pemberton, you're now facing additional charges for unpermitted demolition during active environmental enforcement," Palmer announces. "The debris you've created requires immediate hazmat cleanup." Karen's voice reaches a pitch that could shatter lighthouse glass. "This is harassment. I'm being persecuted for defending property values." Harbor Festival attendees start gathering around the spectacle. 3 years of Karen's victims are finally watching their tormentor face legitimate authority. Pete Torino grins as he offers commentary to news reporters. "That woman spent 3 years telling honest fishermen our gear was illegal," Pete tells Channel 5 News. "Turns out she was the one breaking laws the whole time." But Karen's desperation reaches peak dangerous when she spots me talking to reporters. She storms across the marina grounds, pointing an accusatory finger. "This is all his fault," she shrieks at the camera crews. "Garrett Blackwood is a mentally unstable veteran who forged documents to steal our waterfront." The sound of her public meltdown echoes across Harbor Festival crowds. Families with children start backing away as Karen's voice reaches hysteria levels. "He destroyed my life. He's using fake authority to terrorize innocent homeowners. Someone needs to stop this madman before—" That's when FBI agent Collins steps forward with handcuffs. "Mrs. Pemberton, you're under arrest for attempted bribery of a public official and conspiracy to defraud federal environmental agencies." The crowd goes silent, except for camera shutters clicking rapidly. Karen's face cycles through confusion, rage, and finally, acceptance that her 3-year harassment campaign is officially over. As they lead her away, She makes one final mistake. "You haven't heard the last of this. My husband will sue everyone involved. This marina will be shut down." Frank Pemberton, watching from the crowd, just shakes his head. His insurance business is already under state investigation. His wife just threatened federal officials on camera. He knows their Lighthouse Cove chapter is finished. Dr. Martinez squeezes my shoulder as we watch Karen's arrest. "Garrett, what you did here, protecting working waterfront from fraudulent authority. This is going to be a case study in environmental justice." The Harbor Festival continues around us. Local musicians play while families enjoy fresh lobster and conservation education booths. The community Karen tried to control through fear and intimidation is celebrating freedom from her harassment. I stand on my rebuilt dock, watching sunset approach over waters that are finally, officially, legally protected from future Karens. Uncle Robert's vision of a working waterfront where honest people can enjoy honest boats without harassment has been restored. The sound of kids laughing during sailing lessons reminds me why this battle was worth fighting. Not just for my destroyed yacht, but for every boat owner who'll dock here in the future without facing discriminatory harassment from people who think money equals authority. Karen wanted to play games with power she didn't have. Justice played back with power she couldn't fight. Game over. Harbor Festival reaches peak attendance just as Karen's arrest makes the evening news. 2,000 locals, 3 television crews, federal environmental officers, and one very satisfying public accounting for 3 years of waterfront harassment. The festival setting couldn't be more perfect for maximum community witness. Food vendors, boat displays, children's activities, and live music create a celebration atmosphere that makes Karen's downfall even more dramatic by contrast. Harbor Commissioner Walsh takes the main stage at 4 p.m. for the official Marina Authority recognition ceremony. The crowd gathers around the waterfront bandstand while news cameras position for optimal footage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Walsh announces, "we're here to officially recognize the reactivation of Lighthouse Cove Marina Corporation and clarify waterfront authority that's been confused for several years." Karen, recently released on bail, arrives at the festival looking like she's been through a hurricane. Hair disheveled, designer clothes wrinkled, clutching legal documents like they're life preservers. She pushes through the crowd toward the stage, clearly planning some kind of final public defense of her 3-year harassment campaign. "This is a fraud," she shouts from the crowd. "That man has manipulated this entire community using fake documents and veteran sympathy." The crowd turns to stare. Children stop eating cotton candy. The folk music quartet pauses mid-song. Karen has everyone's attention for what she doesn't realize will be her final performance. Walsh gestures for quiet. "Mrs. Pemberton, would you like to present evidence contradicting the Marina Corporation's legal standing?" Karen marches to the microphone like she's storming a beach. "I have spent 3 years protecting this community's property values from substandard boats and irresponsible owners. The HOA board voted to maintain aesthetic standards that—" "Ma'am," Walsh interrupts, "do you have documentation showing HOA authority over waterway regulation?" Karen pauses, clearly expecting a different question. "We have. The board has always. Community standards require." "Yes or no, Mrs. Pemberton? Do you have legal documentation?" The silence stretches long enough for seagulls to fill the void with their crying. Karen's mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping on deck. "The HOA serves the community interest," she finally manages. "That's not legal documentation," Walsh replies. "Mr. Blackwood, would you present your Marina Corporation evidence?" I step to the microphone with Uncle Robert's folder and 3 weeks of careful legal preparation. The crowd includes every boat owner Karen has harassed, every fishing family she's intimidated, every neighbor she's bullied with fictional authority. These incorporation documents, filed in 1962 and verified by Massachusetts Secretary of State, establish Lighthouse Cove Marina Corporation with authority over all waterfront activities in this harbor. I hold up the papers for the crowd and cameras. "Mrs. Pemberton has spent 3 years enforcing regulations she had no legal right to create, against boat owners she had no authority to regulate, on waters she never owned or controlled." Karen's voice reaches a pitch that could crack harbor ice. "This is a conspiracy. You're all being manipulated by a mentally unstable—" That's when the sound that will haunt Karen forever echoes across the harbor. Crack! Her illegally oversized boat lift, weakened by morning demolition work and stressed by afternoon wind, finally gives up. The The support chains snap simultaneously with a metallic shriek that silences the entire festival. Karen's $60,000 yacht plunges into the harbor like a dropped piano. The splash soaks the first 3 rows of festival attendees. Her boat's fuel tank ruptures, creating a rainbow oil slick that spreads across waters she spent 3 years claiming to protect. The crowd gasps. Children point. Camera crews zoom in on the environmental disaster unfolding in real time. "Oh my God," Karen whispers, watching her boat sink stern first into the harbor she terrorized. "My boat. My beautiful boat." Harbor patrol and environmental response teams mobilize immediately. Boom barriers deploy around the oil spill. Marina safety protocols, the real ones, not Karen's fictional versions, spring into action with professional efficiency. Dr. Martinez speaks into the main microphone with scientific authority. This is exactly why marina corporations maintain strict weight limits and engineering standards. Oversized installations create catastrophic failures that endanger the entire harbor ecosystem. Karen stands waist-deep in her own oil spill, watching 3 years of harassment campaigns end in environmental disaster and public humiliation. The irony is so perfect it feels scripted. Environmental Officer Palmer approaches the microphone with official gravity. "Mrs. Pemberton, you're now facing additional federal charges for creating an environmental hazard during a public event. This oil spill requires immediate containment and could affect protected shellfish beds." The taste of complete justice fills the salt air. Karen wanted to play environmental police with fake authority. Now real environmental police are arresting her for actual environmental crimes. Harbor Festival continues around the cleanup efforts. Local musicians resume playing while containment crews work. The community Karen tried to control through fear and intimidation celebrates their liberation with lobster rolls and live music. I stand at the podium, looking out over waters that are finally, officially, legally protected from harassment. Uncle Robert's vision realized. A working waterfront where honest boats and honest people are welcome. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the crowd, "Lighthouse Cove Marina Corporation is officially operational. We're committed to protecting both maritime heritage and environmental health for generations to come." The crowd applauds while Karen's boat disappears beneath the surface. 3 years of her harassment campaign literally and figuratively sunk in front of the entire community. Justice served. Authority restored. Harbor protected. 6 months later, I'm standing on the same dock where this whole story started. But everything has changed. The harbor sparkles in morning sunlight, free from the toxic cloud of harassment that hung over it for 3 years. Karen Pemberton is serving 8 months in federal prison for bribery, environmental crimes, and conspiracy charges. Her husband Frank lost his insurance license and paid $200,000 in regulatory fines. They sold their waterfront property at a loss to the Torino fishing family who've been working these waters for 4 generations. The irony tastes better than my morning coffee. The family Karen tried hardest to push out now owns her former mansion. Uncle Robert would have loved this, Pete Torino tells me, watching his grandchildren learn to sail in the protected harbor. Working waterfront protected for another generation. The Uncle Robert Maritime Heritage Fund has grown beyond my wildest expectations. Using the collected marina fees and penalty payments, we've established 3 annual scholarships for local kids pursuing marine careers, funded a harbor restoration project that attracts university researchers, and created a community boat workshop where anyone can learn maritime skills. The smell of fresh varnish from the workshop mingles with salt air and the sound of children learning to splice lines. This is what Uncle Robert envisioned. A waterfront where boats bring people together instead of driving them apart. Dr. Martinez stops by every Tuesday to update me on the environmental restoration progress. Karen's oil spill, ironically, triggered federal funding for harbor cleanup that's made our waters cleaner than they've been in decades. "Your marina has become a model for sustainable waterfront development," she tells me, reviewing water quality data that shows dramatic improvement. 3 universities want to use this as a research site for coastal conservation. The legal precedent from our case appears in maritime law textbooks now. Blackwood versus Pemberton is cited in property rights courses as an example of how marina corporations supersede HOA authority in waterfront disputes. Law students study Karen's downfall as a cautionary tale about assuming authority without legal basis. My insurance settlement for the destroyed yacht funded something better than a replacement boat. Second Chance has become Third Chance, a 42-foot sailing school vessel donated by a grateful boat owner from Karen's previous harassment campaigns. Every Saturday morning, I teach sailing to local kids whose families could never afford yacht club fees. The sound of young voices calling out sail trim commands echoes across waters that are finally free from discrimination based on boat size or owner income. The taste of redemption gets better every time one of these kids masters a difficult maneuver or falls in love with the wind and water that Uncle Robert protected for them. 3 other coastal communities have contacted me about similar HOA conflicts. Apparently, wealthy newcomers trying to eliminate working waterfronts is a common problem. I've become an unofficial consultant on marina rights and maritime law, something I never expected during my Coast Guard career. The regional boating magazine features our marina annually as an example of heritage preservation and community cooperation. Harbor Festival has doubled in size, attracting visitors who want to see the place where David beat Goliath using legitimate authority instead of fake power. I'm dating now. Dr. Martinez and I discovered we share more than just environmental concerns. She's helping me understand the ecological science behind Uncle Robert's marina design. Turns out my uncle was an environmental visionary 50 years ahead of his time. The creak of dock planks under my feet sounds different now. Not just because they're new, but because they represent something permanent. Protection that will outlast any future Karen who thinks money equals authority over other people's boats. Every morning, I walk the marina boundaries with a cup of coffee and a sense of completion. 8 waterfront families now have secure, affordable leases. The fishing cooperative has guaranteed dock space. The conservation partnership protects water quality. And the Heritage Fund ensures that working waterfront traditions continue for generations. The sound of rigging chiming in harbor breezes carries stories of justice served and communities protected. Uncle Robert's vision lives on in every boat that docks here without fear of harassment, every child who learns to sail without discrimination, every family who finds sanctuary on waters that welcome everyone. Karen wanted to turn this harbor into an exclusive playground for people like herself. Instead, her harassment campaign created legal protections that ensure it remains accessible to honest people with honest boats forever. Sometimes the best revenge isn't personal. It's building something better than what they tried to destroy. I stand on my dock as sunrise paints the harbor gold and red, listening to the sounds of a community that's learned the difference between real authority and fake power. In a few hours, this dock will fill with kids excited about their sailing lesson, elderly fishermen sharing stories with young captains, and families discovering the joy of boats that bring people together instead of driving them apart. The taste of lasting justice is worth every moment of the battle it took to achieve it.